Welcome to the War in Heaven. I am Austin Hepworth. I'm here along with Michael Hepworth. And today we're going to talk about goals. It's New Year's 2025, and goals are a big part of New Year's, I guess you could say. People think about them, people talk about them, they have their New Year's resolutions. But we want to talk about the aspect of goals associated with spirituality, associated with spiritual development, and associated with creation, faith, a number of these concepts, as well as personal agency. And so we're hoping that this discussion today perhaps shed some light on things that we can think about or improve upon in our lives. And so we have the aspect of understanding that God's power is one of faith. He creates through faith. And I think one reason for that is because when God creates something, then there's this aspect that it's truly created. It's something new, didn't exist before. And there's this process of creation that involves having a thought, having a desire, having something that we then act upon. And so here in this life on earth, we're in a situation where there are pieces of our life that are just decided for us. We don't get to fully decide, what our neighbors do or what the government does in all situations. But there's plenty that we still get to choose. And in America, especially, we're blessed to live in a land of liberty where we get to make decisions for ourselves in many ways. And so then the question arises, what do we want? And it was interesting to me because this is a question that God asked me as I was praying for a number of years, trying to know things I should do. I said, hey, I have a desire. I want to do what I'm supposed to do. I want to, I guess, yeah, what do you want me to do, God? I want to be involved in things. And God didn't tell me. And the Spirit kept asking me the question, well, what do you want? And I'd say, well, I want to do what you want me to do. So tell me that. And I'd say, well, what do you want to do? And over again, the Spirit asked me, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And as I reflected on this for, again, a number of years, I'm still not pretending to have all the answers to why God has asked me this. But I do feel very strongly currently that there's an aspect to our spiritual development where we have to choose something we want and we have to pursue it. We have to try. We have to be anxiously engaged in a good cause. We have to be trying to build, create, or do something because we're trying to become like God. That's one of the big purposes for this life, for everything that took place. It's one of the big reasons why the War in Heaven came about, is because God wanted to take us from the state we were in to a state where we could become like Him. And that meant learning to be creators. Learning to be a creator means we have to learn to shape our destiny and our future. It's not enough to simply sit around and wait for God to step in and take care of things, wait for others to step in and take care of things. We're not learning what we're supposed to if we do that. So I have a couple quotes to share that talk about this a little bit. One's from Gordon B. Hinckley in 1996. He said, "You are good, but it is not enough just to be good. You must be good for something. You must contribute good to the world. The world must be a better place for your presence, and the good that is in you must be spread to others." This is something that I've often thought about. It is not enough just to be good. You must be good for something. You must contribute good to the world. The world must be a better place for your presence. As I think about things like that, I often wonder, am I, kind of floating along? Am I just here sailing the ocean, seeing what life brings me? Or do I have a place I want to be? Do I have something I want, something I desire that I want to do or leave for the world or for others? Fitzhugh Dodson says, without goals and plans to reach them, you are like a ship that has set sail with no destination. You're just out along for the ride, essentially. And then Norman Vincent Peale says, all successful people have a goal. No one can get anywhere unless he knows where he wants to go and what he wants to be or do. And again, this kind of goes back to the Alice in Wonderland thing where the Cheshire Cat asks, where they ask directions, and the Cheshire Cat says, well, where do you want to go? I said, well, I don't know. And the cat says, well, it doesn't matter which road you take then. Just pick one of them because you don't know where you want to go, so just choose one. And goals are you could say an act of faith because we're setting a destination. We're setting a place we want to travel to, journey to, whether in a physical or spiritual sense, or we're setting something we want to become. And then we start working towards it. And Jim Rohn says, goals. There's no telling what you can do when you get inspired by them. There's no telling what you can do when you believe in them. There's no telling what will happen when you act upon them. And I really like that because it goes to the heart kind of believing. If we set goals and we try and do something and we pursue it, and if we work with God and partner with him on these things, there's no telling what can happen. And this is some of what I guess I feel strongly and believe in strongly, that as individuals, we have incredible capacity to change things, to shape our future. I don't believe the future is set in stone. I believe we get to be an active co-creator in this future. This is where our agency comes in. We exercise it for good. We become proactive. We work and shape and do these things, and so much can happen. And then that begs the question, well, why? Why should I care? Why should I want to change the world? Why should I want to contribute good? Why should I want to share the good that's in me? And this goes to an interesting thing where we have competing desires that operate inside of us. Some of our desires say, let's just sit here, watch another movie, consume another podcast, be entertained. That's what we're here for, and I enjoy that type of life. And we have desires that push that in us. Those desires may compete with other desires in us, kind of this hunger that we want to be something, we want to contribute, we want to help in some way or another. And I believe very strongly that the Spirit of God that's in us whispers to all of us that there's something we can do and contribute. We were sent here to do something. And so then that begs the question too of, do our goals this year reflect that? Are our goals, I want to read some more books, or I want to eat healthier, I want to run more. Those are, there's nothing wrong with those goals necessarily, but are they being made with a bigger purpose in mind? Are they being made with the intent of doing, being, shaping, becoming? And it's possible they are. Maybe we want to become a professional athlete. The health goals could really help with that. Maybe we want to increase our mental aptitude, and so reading more books could help with that. Maybe we want to become someone who could invent something or whatever. So again, we read, we study, we do those things. But ultimately, our goals are most powerful when we can associate them with a character trait or something we want to become or something we want to do or achieve. And the most amazing thing is to watch as we work for these goals, the changes it can make in us and the happiness it can bring. And these are the things that I think that we have to know. We have to understand that our job is to try. And as Benjamin E. Mays says, he says, it must be borne that the tragedy of life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in having no goal to reach. Some of our goals we may never achieve in this life, but they motivate us. Walt Disney said a person should set his goals as early as he can and devote all his energy and talent to getting there. With enough effort, he may achieve it, or he may find something that is even more rewarding. But in the end, no matter what the outcome, he will know he has been alive. And this knowing that we've been alive, this is one of the things that, again, the war in heaven is kind of it's a crucial piece of that. We're here to determine, do we want life? Do we want all the life entails? Life has a future. the future hinges on agency. We choose, we set the path. And how are we actively striving to shape our future and the future of those around us? Michael, curious what thoughts you have so far as we start talking about goals and becoming.
When you mentioned Gordon B. Hinckley saying it's not enough to be good, you must be good for something. A couple of things popped into my head. I was thinking of in the book of Genesis in the Bible, when God creates the world and everything on it, he pronounces all these things as good. And so things that God creates, they're good. And then there's a scripture in the Book of Mormon. Lehi talks about the creations of God and said there are things that are made that are acted on. There are things that are made to act and things that are made to be acted upon. And the mankind, been made to act. If we cease to act, to create, as we've been discussing here, we may be good, as in the good that God created in the world, an animal, a tree, but you're not good for anything other than being that animal or that tree or that river or whatever it is. You're not involved in that creation process unless you are acting and becoming. And you talked about the saddest thing is not having goals, not reaching a goal, but not having a goal. And I think it's because if we're not striving for something, then we're just a thing that is acted upon. And there's the aspect of life and death in that. You're not a live thing at that time. You're just something to be acted upon. And in Charles Dickens' book, The Christmas Carol, he had one of his characters at the very beginning when Robert Marley appears to Scrooge. He talks a number of times about the spirits that are still going out on the earth that are unhappy like himself. And the reason he talks about them being unhappy is because they are no longer able to impact those around them for good. He says, how does he say it? He says, "It's required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth and turn to happiness." It just reminds me of us missing the opportunity to act, to become something, to touch lives around us. I think I'm probably going to misquote this, but there's a short poem that says something like, "The saddest words of tongue and pen are these, it might have been." We gain meaning and satisfaction in our life as we become and as we do and as we strive towards. And if we stop, then we're just something to be acted on. And that's kind of that difference between life and death, is we're living when we're striving, when we're moving forward, and we stop living when we just sit and we're acted on. So goals are that spirit within us, I think, that is trying to do, become something more. Sometimes we really limit ourselves when we just say, my goal is to we really narrow the scope to, my goal is to do this one thing. I want to I don't know, run a mile or something, and that's a good goal. But if our end goal is, I want to become a kind of person that does these things, and inside of that end goal of being a certain person is running a mile and then running 2 miles, we're becoming something at that point. And so there's a lot to living in satisfaction with setting goals and living to them, and then not having that later in life saying, I could have done all these things, but I wasn't a creature that acted. I was a creature that was acted upon.
And I really like you talking about that. Viktor Frankl said, life can be pulled by goals just as surely as it can be pushed by drives. And I think we as humans, again, with this aspect of life and death that we're here experiencing, we're here to experience, do we want life or do we want death? What is it more? And we have a natural man inside of us. And it's kind of the natural human drive. We have drives to eat, for sexuality, different things. And those drives can determine our life. It's kind of like we're then being acted upon. And that the more we act on those and the more we let those dictate what happens in our life, the less we're alive and the less we can experience happiness and joy. The more that we pull our life or dictate where we're headed, not allowed to be pushed by these drives, or the more we act, the happier we are. And I'm quite interested in all the discussions that I see for mental health about depression and anxiety and all these different things. I rarely see people talk about the satisfaction of work. And I've often wondered, is America becoming so rich that we've stopped pursuing meaningful work? We don't have to. So we can just kind of float along. We're set style. It's like, oh, what does Netflix bring next? What's the next big sporting event? And we just kind of float from thing to thing. But when we're doing that, life loses meaning. Life loses fulfillment. And we can regain that by taking on responsibility. And I strongly believe that with our goals and our New Year's resolutions, it's a good time to check each year to say, okay, where did I get? Where am I off? Where do I want to be? But to really take goals that start to put some level of responsibility on us. Responsibility helps us feel alive. Maybe you're not married. Maybe you should have a goal to get married. Take on that responsibility. Maybe you don't have kids. You could have children if you're married. Take that next step. Take on some responsibility. Maybe you should take the responsibility of writing a book, putting your thoughts out there. Maybe you should take on the responsibility of being involved with the government or being involved with a nonprofit, volunteering for something, stepping up in your church, doing something in the community. Goals like that can bring life to your soul once you get out and start doing something. And they become more impactful if there's something you want to become tied to that. Do you want to become someone who no longer lives by fear? Do you want to become someone who isn't concerned about what other people think about them? Do you want to become a patient person? Do you want to be filled with God's love for yourself and for others? There's some amazing things to pursue in life. I 100% believe that if you become filled with God's love, you will live the happiest, most satisfactory life you could. And yet, I see so few of us consciously striving for that. And we don't set goals necessarily based on that. And again, the natural man inside, we're going to be angry. That's easy. We're going to be upset. That's easy. We're going to be impatient. That's easy. And we can justify it. And we can say, well, it's because they did this and all those things. But we're not happy in those states. We're not satisfied. We're not fulfilled. And to me, goal setting is a time for us just to step back and say, what do I want? I have something. Do I want to share it? If we share what God's given us with others, we become happy. There's a analogy of lakes. I live by the Great Salt Lake. It's here. Salt Lake City is named after the Great Salt Lake. Great Salt Lake's one of the largest dead lakes in the world. And so it's a lake that has water flowing into it. The water from around Utah mountains, snow melts and things, and it drains to this Great Salt Lake. But the Great Salt Lake no longer has an outlet. It just accumulates water, and then the only outlet is that it evaporates. And so as it evaporates, clean water comes out, but all the garbage stays in. And the water gets saltier and saltier and saltier to the point where it can't hold life. So it doesn't have fish in it, stinks. It's just kind of an amazing wasteland to see. And lakes that are the most vibrant in life, they're teeming with life, have fish and animals and all types of things. They have a strong inflow, they have water coming in, and they have a strong outflow. They're sharing. And as the water moves and that constant movement comes through, in and out, in and out, in and out, they're very alive. They're teeming with life. And I view individuals the same. If we just receive and we take things in like the Great Salt Lake and just take, we become salty, crusty, life loses its meaning, and we lose life over time as we're not sharing. But as we take the things that we've been given, as we take the knowledge we have, the skills we have, and we work to freely share these and put them out, and again, that could be in a career, it could be a nonprofit. It doesn't mean you have to volunteer and not get paid. You can put it into creating on a job. There's all types of things. You can write a book, you can sell it, but you're sharing it. You're putting it out there. You're engaged in this, you call it the circle of life, this process to continue to give when you've been given to, and that fills internally you with life. And that life brings happiness, satisfaction, joy. And I really strongly believe that a lot of our depression and anxiety, again, probably not all of it, I'm sure there's, again, physical things that go wrong, but a lot of it, I believe, can be addressed through meaningful work and pursuits. And we can stop and take a minute to think about these, to be able to take the next steps to say, am I spending my time on something that will bring satisfaction? Am I spending my time sharing what I've been given and creating life inside, just like the lakes do that share? Or am I like the Great Salt Lake, just kind of take it all in and keep it here? And then things just evaporate and dry up, and I'm left with the salt in the end that kills life ultimately. And so that's one of the ways I look at things, to Michael's point about being an agent, whether to act or be acted upon. If we act, we're sharing, we're creating, we're shaping, we're taking part in what life itself means, and that brings happiness. But life ultimately takes work. Again, it's one of the reasons why people choose spiritual death. It's because life takes work. We actually have to learn to love work and learn to enjoy the process, learn to enjoy that it's not easy, that there's work to it. That's what makes it fulfilling. Is, again, it's fulfilling to hike and climb a tall mountain. It's nowhere near as fulfilling just to have a helicopter ride to the top. It may be fun, it may look cool, but you do not have the fulfillment of having hiked up it. So work is what brings fulfillment. The two go hand in hand. Michael, your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, to reiterate, Jordan Peterson once said that most people find the meaning that sustains them through the vicissitudes of life, not in happiness, but in responsibility. I think we gain a lot of meaning and satisfaction as we accept responsibility and we do something with it. I think just an example of that is being a parent. You talk about the inflows and the outflows and creating, putting yourself out there, putting something out there for other people. One of the greatest ways I know of to do that is through being a parent. You are always putting out for your children. You've gained a lot through your life, and you put out for your children. You're trying to help them in their lives learn and grow, and they give back. You get a lot back from your children for sure, and there's a lot of inflows and outflows there. But there's a huge responsibility in being a parent, and it's a very rewarding, very difficult, but very rewarding job. It's so rewarding because it's so difficult, because there's so much responsibility there. And I've always been interested. My wife and I homeschool our children, and other people have told us before that they just couldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to homeschool their children. And this isn't to say that everybody should homeschool, everybody should not, one way or the other. I'm just interested in the response that, we couldn't do that. I always wonder why, because I don't know that there's anything particularly special about my wife and I. I think that we can do the things in large part that we set our minds to do. I think many times maybe there's not a desire to do that, but the I can't do that always makes me wonder. I think we do that a lot in our lives if the path may seem difficult. But then I think we should ask ourselves, what is it that we desire, to your original question? If what we desire is something we feel that we could give our children through homeschool, then that's what we pursue. And so taking it out of homeschool to all things, you ever look at a thing and you say that person's doing an interesting, a good thing, but that's not me. I could never do that. You probably should stop and say, well, maybe I could. Maybe it's the path that's daunting. Maybe I don't desire the work, but I desire the outcome. If you can let the desire of the outcome work enough, if you don't just dismiss it saying, I can't do that, maybe that becomes a thing that you can do. It's just a matter of building the desire to put in the work for it. Perhaps you desire to be healthier, but you don't necessarily desire giving up a lot of sweets that you have. If you let that healthy desire work in you long enough, you'll gain the desire to put off maybe some of the food that you shouldn't be eating and start eating better food. And I think that just comes down to when you desire to be a better person, you look at the things that are preventing you from being a better person. And eventually, if you let that desire grow in you, and you don't say, I can't, let that desire grow, you'll find out that you gain the desire to put off the things that are holding you back. And you can start down the better path. And that's all through our setting our goals and following these processes that we've been discussing. So again, parenthood's a great example of that. It's a super difficult path. I think people get on the path because they desire that outcome, that comes, the reward that comes from the giving and the responsibility and the helping other people. And it's a huge reward. And I think if you can look at challenges that way, that the more responsibility, the more challenging, probably the more satisfaction involved. It can kind of help us grow the desire to go down that road and to take more responsibility and be better people.
Yeah, I really like how you talk about growing a desire. I believe very strongly that our desires can be fed, nourished, grown till they become strong enough. And we're beings full of competing desires. We're born as part of the war in heaven. We're born, and this comes from, I'd say, the fall of Adam. I don't know if we've talked about that too much, but Adam and Eve were created in the image of God. They have the light of Christ in them. They eventually partake of this fruit, which introduces an element into them that is foreign, you could say. We call it the natural man, but it's this debased version of humanity. And these two things are at work inside of us: the light of Christ, the natural man, and then our own soul choosing which one of those we pursue. And both of those have sway and influence in our life. They influence what we ultimately choose to do. We're still responsible for our choices. We still have agency, even with their pushes or drives or whatever that are there. But when we're trying to decide which one controls us, which one we respond to more, which one has more influence. And again, we always control us, so I shouldn't say controls us, but which one has the upper hand, which one we're going to give into or follow. To me, it depends on which one we feed. And over time, if we feed a desire and we work on it and we push it, it will grow until it's the dominating desire. It's the one that's strong enough to then say, I don't want that food anymore if we're trying to be healthy. Or I'm not going to yell at that person today because I'm trying to become kinder. Or I'm going to do the work necessary to learn to be filled with the love of God. I'm going to look at myself. I'm going to identify my pride. I'm going to go through the hard things because I want to be a being that can love. And as we feed these desires, they grow. But it's an intentional choice. Our beliefs, our logic is often shaped by the things we desire. Our desires are often shaped by the things we choose. We choose ultimately what we desire. We choose ultimately what we believe. We choose ultimately our logical framework that we employ as we work to construct life and find meaning and happiness and all these different things. And this is discussed a little bit in the Book of Alma. There's a prophet there in the Book of Mormon that talks about this desire. And he said, if you will awake and arouse your faculties, even to an experiment upon my words, and exercise a particle of faith, yea, even if you can no more than desire to believe, let this desire work in you until you believe in a manner that you can give place for a portion of my words. This to me is very profound. This is where I form a lot of my beliefs about desire, in that we can feed it, we can let it work, we can let it grow until it has place in us, until it's operating and informing our decisions, informing what we're pursuing, informing what we're doing. But again, we're choosing that. And so go back to God's question. Well, what do you want? I have desires of the day. $1 million would be nice. Health would be nice. And then the question is, okay, so if you want help, are you doing anything for it? Are you eating healthy? Are you out jogging? Are you out exercising? What are you doing? And if I go, I'm not doing anything to be healthy, but I'm praying for it, then I could just be, wishing for God's magic carpet to take me, skip the journey portion of help, and just arrive at the destination. But if that happens, there's no fulfillment in that. Or maybe I'm working to cultivate a desire. Maybe I'm trying to feed that good desire. I know I don't have the desire yet that's strong enough to be healthy, so I still do things I shouldn't. But maybe I'm trying to let that desire work within me. And that's a possibility too. But ultimately, I found that if I go to my prayers and I say, if I ask in each thing, what am I doing to achieve the thing I'm praying for? How much do I want it? Do I want it enough to work for it? And that's a really interesting question to ask ourselves. Do I want it enough to work for it? If we don't, if the honest answer is nope, I haven't put in any work for it, then we need to find a way to cultivate that desire. We need to make a choice to feed it, to improve it, to put time and energy into it until we want it enough to work for it. And I started looking at my prayers, trying to evaluate where I was at internally and looking at things I was praying for and asking myself, how many of the things I'm praying for am I actively working for? Or are my prayers more just a wish list to God? The genie in the bottle type thing. Like, oh, if he could just give me this and this and this. I'm not doing anything for it, but yeah, if he could give it to me, that'd be nice. And it was sad. So many things that I was praying for, I was not actively working for. And that was a serious reflection on me. And I realized if I can align my prayers, which are a conscious statement of something I would want, with my actions, I'm going to become far happier in life. And am I willing to work for it? If I pray for peace on earth, am I willing to do something for it? Am I willing to do something hard for it? Do I want it? And so I would openly invite you this new year, 2025, think about what it is you want. Do you want it enough to work for it? Do you want it enough to pursue it, to build it, to share it? If not, then set goals for how you can develop and cultivate that faith and that desire. If you do want it enough to work for it, then start listing out what it takes to achieve that. And again, whether or not you actually make it, it could be a lifelong journey, it could be a lifelong goal. That doesn't matter as much because, as Walt Disney says, you'll at least know you were alive. And he's not talking about just being here on this earth. He's talking about actually experiencing the depth, the joy that comes through creation, through setting goals, through achieving, through truly living. And these are things that bring us the satisfaction that we so long for in life. Work will bring that. And it's a blessing to have work. It's a blessing to have that opportunity. It's a blessing to have hardships and to struggle because it makes it, the end, that much sweeter, that much more enjoyable as we work and strive to be, to shape, to do, and to become something new. Michael, do you have any other thoughts or comments for us today?
Yeah, the other thing I would encourage you to do is not only think about what you want, but take some time to think about who you want to be. Look at characteristics and say, when I look down the road, it doesn't matter what your age is, look down the road a number of years, 5, 10, 15, 20, and say, when I see myself, what kind of person is that? What kind of characteristics have they developed? I think about individuals that I know that have attributes, characteristics that I respect, that I would like to see myself. And I say, okay, if they do that thing well, let's say they're a very charitable person and I would like to be more charitable. If they do that really well, that's something I would desire to see myself. And I could say, I wish I was more charitable and leave it at that. Or I could say, 10 years down the road, do I see myself being more charitable than I am today? Maybe not necessarily what the other people are, but more than I am. And so these characters, we can look at who we wish to be, what we wish to be doing as far as the kind of person we are, and let that fuel our decisions today. There's I can't remember, I'm going to paraphrase this quote as well, but somebody once said that there's a man down the road that you recognize, that you know, because that's just you grown older. And you can see that person as you look into your future, and then you say to yourself, what kind of person is that? Is it just me today, but with an older body? Or is it me that's taken time to learn and to grow and to become something even more, something bigger and better? So that's just another activity to do. Write down characteristics you would like to develop more. You'd like to see in yourself in 5, 10, 15, 50 years, doesn't matter. And if at the very basis, let those drive what you're trying to do. Even if you can't work up to, I'm going to do something about it right now, let the desire of that kind of person work in you until you decide this is the path I'm going to take to try to become that person.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome invitation. Something I'd love to do. And I know I'm a little late because the new year started, but my kids and I and wife will be sitting down tonight to go over goals more and things. And I think that it'd be awesome to look at some of these character traits and who we want to become. And to really make 2025 a year of intentionality, to say, I'm a being to act. I want to act, I want to shape, I want to do. And pursuing that and letting that desire grow in me, and continue to grow as I feed it and try and act on it and pursue it. Our actions ultimately feed the things we desire. The more we can put ourselves in positions to act and to do things, the more we'll desire some of these things. So appreciate you joining us today as we talk about what do you want? And that question that God will ask us at times, and that question that we should ask ourselves. And to Michael's point, and what do you want to become? Who do you want to become? Are we striving for anything in life, or is it just to float along as a ship with no destination? But again, meaning and happiness come through having goals, destinations, things we're working towards. So thanks for joining us as we talk about these things. We hope that 2025 goes super well for you for sure. But we'll continue having discussions about the war in heaven, about life and death, and some of these spiritual aspects. So be sure to tune in again later. Thank you.